Imagine waking up tomorrow as the exact same person you are today. Same values, same morals, same conscience. And within a week, you are humiliating strangers, screaming at them, enjoying their suffering. Not because you're evil, not because you're broken, but because someone handed you authority, and everyone around you acted like it was normal. The most disturbing part? Psychologists once proved that this doesn't require psychopaths. It doesn't require criminals. It doesn't even require bad people. It only requires a role, a uniform, and an environment that quietly rewards cruelty. The question isn't whether you would become the villain. The question is, how long would it take? Because in 1971, a group of ordinary college students accidentally revealed something terrifying about human nature. And what happened next forced the world to confront a possibility most people still refuse to believe. The monster people fear in others may be hiding inside all of us. Most people like to imagine they know exactly who they are. They believe their character is fixed, stable, predictable. They think kindness comes from within. That morality is a permanent feature of the personality, that if placed in difficult circumstances, they would remain themselves. But history keeps telling a different story. And one experiment exposed that reality in a way so disturbing that even decades later, people still argue about what it truly revealed. In the summer of 1971, psychologist Philip Zimbardo decided to answer a question that seems simple. What happens when ordinary people are given power over other ordinary people? Not in theory, not in a classroom, not through surveys, but in real life. So he built a prison. Not inside a government facility, not inside a maximum security institution, inside the basement of Stanford University. And that's where everything began. At first, the participants seemed completely ordinary. College students, healthy, psychologically screened, no criminal backgrounds, no signs of aggression, no warning labels, just regular young men looking to earn some money. Then they were randomly assigned roles. Some became guards, others became prisoners. A simple coin toss, nothing more. And that's what makes the story so unsettling. The guards weren't selected because they were dominant. The prisoners weren't selected because they were submissive. The roles were random. Yet within days, the experiment began transforming them. But what happened wasn't immediate. And that's where the psychology becomes fascinating. Because evil rarely announces itself. It doesn't burst through the door. It creeps in, quietly, almost invisibly. At first, the guards were awkward, uncertain, self-conscious. They weren't sure how to behave. After all, they knew this wasn't a real prison. Everyone understood it was an experiment. Everyone knew they could leave, or at least they thought they could. Then something changed. The guards were given uniforms, mirrored sunglasses, batons, authority, and something strange began happening inside their minds. The role started becoming real. Psychologists call this de-individuation. A process where personal identity begins dissolving into a group identity. When people stop seeing themselves as individuals, they often stop feeling individually responsible. Think about the last time you saw someone act completely differently in a crowd. Maybe online, maybe at a sporting event, maybe during a protest. Alone, they might never behave that way. But inside a group, the rules change. Responsibility spreads out. Conscience becomes quieter, and behavior becomes more extreme. Inside the Stanford prison, that transformation accelerated rapidly. The guards began inventing punishments. They started enforcing meaningless rules. They demanded obedience, not because they were ordered to, because they discovered they could. And power has a peculiar effect on the human brain. It doesn't simply reveal character. Sometimes it reshapes it. Research repeatedly shows that power reduces empathy. When people gain control over others, they often become less sensitive to suffering. Not always intentionally. Sometimes they simply stop noticing it. The needs of others become background noise. And this is where the experiment took a dark turn. The prisoners began losing control over their own identities. Their names were removed. They became numbers. Pause for a moment and think about that. A name is more than a label. It's a reminder of individuality, humanity, personhood. Take it away, and people begin feeling invisible. The prisoners weren't being physically tortured. Yet many began experiencing intense emotional distress, anxiety, depression, humiliation, panic. One prisoner broke down completely, then another, and another. Within days, the psychological damage became impossible to ignore. But here's what most people miss. The truly frightening part wasn't what the guards did. It was how quickly everyone accepted it. Even the prisoners. Even the researchers. Even Zimbardo himself. And that's where this experiment stops being about prisons and starts being about society. Because human beings have an extraordinary tendency to adapt to environments. Even unhealthy ones. Especially unhealthy ones. Imagine entering a room where everyone behaves as though something terrible is normal. At first you'd resist. You'd question it. You'd feel uncomfortable. But day after day, the abnormal begins feeling ordinary. Psychologists call this normalization. And it may be one of the most powerful forces shaping human behavior. People don't just adapt to environments. They adapt to expectations. If everyone around them accepts something, they slowly begin accepting it too. Even when it conflicts with their values. And history is filled with examples. Not because humans are naturally evil, but because humans are naturally social. We look to others to determine what is acceptable, what is safe, what is expected, which means our morality is often more fragile than we'd like to admit. But the Stanford Prison Experiment revealed something even deeper. Something hiding beneath obedience itself. Because the guards weren't simply following instructions. Many became creative, inventive. They developed new forms of humiliation. New ways to exert control. New methods of domination. Why? Because power creates psychological rewards. Every time someone obeys us, the brain notices. Every time we influence behavior, the brain notices. Every time we feel important, respected, feared, or superior, the brain notices. Status has always been valuable in human evolution. For thousands of years, status meant resources, protection, survival. And traces of those ancient instincts still exist today. Which means power can become addictive. Not in the dramatic movie villain sense. In subtle ways. A manager abusing authority. A partner becoming controlling. A friend manipulating a social group. A stranger enjoying anonymous cruelty online. The scale changes. The psychology remains remarkably similar. And that's why the Stanford Prison Experiment continues to matter. Because most people assume cruelty begins with hatred. Often it doesn't. Sometimes it begins with permission. Permission from authority. Permission from a group. Permission from a role. Permission from an environment. And once those permissions exist, people start discovering parts of themselves they never expected to find. But before you conclude that humanity is hopeless, there's another side to the story. A detail that rarely gets enough attention. Not every guard became cruel. Some resisted. Some remained compassionate. Some refused to exploit their authority. And that raises a powerful question. If the environment was influencing everyone, why did some people resist? The answer reveals one of the most important lessons in psychology. Situations influence behavior, but they do not completely determine it. Character still matters. Self-awareness still matters. Moral courage still matters. The difference is that these qualities are tested most severely when nobody expects them. It's easy to be kind when kindness is rewarded. It's easy to be ethical when ethics cost nothing. The real test arrives when cruelty becomes convenient, when silence becomes easier, when conformity feels safer. That's where character reveals itself. And perhaps that's the hidden lesson buried beneath the controversy surrounding this experiment. Because decades later, researchers would criticize aspects of its methodology. Questions emerged. Debates intensified. Interpretations changed. But one truth survived all of it. Human beings are far more influenced by circumstances than they like to believe. And that realization should make us uncomfortable. Because it forces us to ask a question few people enjoy asking themselves. Who am I when nobody is watching? Who am I when power is placed in my hands? Who am I when cruelty becomes socially acceptable? Who am I when everyone else joins in? Most people never find out. They live inside environments that never push those boundaries, never test those limits, never expose those hidden corners of personality. But history repeatedly shows that under the right conditions, ordinary people can do extraordinary harm. And ordinary people can show extraordinary courage. The same species produced tyrants. The same species produced heroes. The same human psychology created both. Which means the most important battle isn't happening in governments, or prisons, or institutions. It's happening inside individual minds. Every day, in small moments, moments nobody remembers, moments nobody records, moments where we choose whether power will make us more human, or less. Because the Stanford Prison Experiment was never really about a prison. The basement was merely a stage. The uniforms were props. The cells were scenery. The real subject was human nature. And the disturbing truth is that the experiment never truly ended. It continues every day. In workplaces, schools, relationships, online communities, political movements, families, anywhere power exists, anywhere status exists, anywhere people stop seeing individuals and start seeing categories. And perhaps that's the realization that lingers long after the story ends. The line between kindness and cruelty is not as wide as most people think. The line between victim and oppressor is thinner than we'd like to believe. And the greatest danger isn't the existence of monsters. It's the comforting belief that we could never become one. Because the people in that basement didn't wake up intending to be cruel. They simply stepped into a role. And little by little, the role stepped into them. If this story made you question how much of your behavior comes from your personality, and how much comes from your environment, leave a comment with the moment that disturbed you most. Because sometimes the most uncomfortable conversations reveal the most important truths about ourselves. And if human behavior fascinates you, there are even deeper psychological experiments that become more unsettling the further you look. To encourage us to create more values for you, like and subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell.